Today is a different type of video. Normally, I talk about movies. Sometimes I recommend a bunch of films, and other times I like to go in-depth on a single film. But today, we're going to take a look at a very important part of the film business that is not motion picture, but rather a single picture. Film posters, and more generally, print advertisements for film have existed almost as long as films themselves. The first film poster, at least for one specific movie, was made in 1895 for the Lumiere brothers' film La Rose et Rose. They've been a staple of film marketing ever since, and, like the films, have gone through periods of different schools of thought and design techniques. If I were to show you a poster of a big movie from the 80s and set it next to a poster from a popular film from, let's say, the 40s, well, you would be able to tell that they are from completely different eras. If you're somewhat familiar with film posters, you might be easily able to determine which decades they're from, granted that you're not already familiar with the movies. Over the last 130 years of filmmaking and film poster design, some designers rose to the top to become rock star designers. Chances are, you've seen the incredible work of Saul Bass, who designed the posters for movies like Vertigo, Anatomy of a Murder, and The Shining, to name just a few. Another one of my favorite poster designers is Bill Gold, who made the posters for Casablanca, A Clockwork Orange, Dirty Harry, Bullet, The Exorcist, and a whole bunch of other classics. These film posters have become as much a part of our cultural iconography as the movies themselves. Well, when the posters are good. Studios might see them as marketing material, something to print en masse before movie releases, display in windows for a period of time, then strip down and throw in the trash when the cinematic run of the film ends. However, I think that they're more than that, or they can be more than that. A great film poster can be a work of art. There's a reason why so many cinephiles collect them and display them on their walls. Here in Austin, at the Austin Film Society, old and foreign posters of films cover the walls of the interior, even inside the bathrooms. By the way, my urinal of choice at AFS is the one with the Hour of the Wolf poster. It just sucks me into Bergman's strange world. I mean, it's a really nice poster to pee to. The express purpose of a film poster is to accomplish one thing: to convince audiences to buy tickets. They might show all the actors who appear in the film, the director, the awards the movie won, the other successful films the director or producers made, and so on. The poster's design can also clue you in on what genre the film is. A poster for a rom-com usually looks a lot different than a poster for a horror film, for example. On top of that, the poster needs to capture the feeling, the vibes of the movie in one single image. Making a poster for a movie is a lot harder than you might think. Assuming that an average feature film is about 2 hours long, or 120 minutes, or 7,200 seconds, then since most films are shot at 24 frames per second, that's 172,800 frames in a 2-hour-long film. One image needs to represent all of these frames. Let's take a look at a couple posters that I think accomplish this pretty well. Here's the poster for Paul Schrader's movie, Hardcore. It's fairly minimalist. There's a black rectangle with the text, "Oh my God, that's my daughter." Underneath that, we see a distressed George C. Scott right next to the title of the film. We can piece these three elements together to know that the movie is an emotional roller coaster ride of a film about a man finding his daughter working in pornography. The poster for The Exorcist plays on the contrast of light and dark. The priest stands in a bright light, but darkness surrounds him, creeping in on him. He has an aura of light around him, but he's in a world of complete darkness. The poster is striking and eye-catching, but it also clues you in on some of the general themes of the movie. I'll leave it at that as an introduction as to why people should appreciate great film posters, because now I'm going to stop talking about film posters in America and instead talk about film posters in Poland. Out of all the countries on Earth, designers in Poland have created some of the strangest and most striking film posters of all time. But why Poland, of all places? There's actually a fairly interesting little bit of film history that explains why. Before we begin, I want to shout out the book from which I got a lot of this information. It's called Film Posters in Poland by Dorota Folga-Januszewska. It's an incredibly informative book that goes through the history of poster design in Poland throughout the 20th century. It's not too long, so you can read it in a day or less, and it has lots of pretty pictures, which is always a plus. So if this video makes you interested in Polish posters, consider checking out this book if you want to dive a bit deeper. We all know that films changed dramatically over the course of the early 20th century. but so did their posters. The posters started out fairly simple, consisting mostly of text and borrowing a lot from posters made for the theater. Though, in some of these, posters added additional information about the films that weren't present in the films themselves. Sort of like how tutorials and backstories in retro games were often found in the manuals. However, graphic design, photographs, and painting quickly made their way onto film posters. Some early posters that were widely disseminated had large parts of them blank. The poster would be a painting of a character or a scene in a movie, but there would be hardly any text or no text at all. This was to facilitate wide distribution, especially in foreign markets. Local cinemas would print their own text and paste them onto the posters. Essentially, the distributors left it up to the cinemas for localization. To save money, some of these posters would travel along with the films, from cinema to cinema and country to country. What ended up happening with these posters is that they would become super thick from each theater pasting their own captions on it. Now, not every film was treated this way. Bigger studios tended to want to control the marketing of their films a bit more, so they would make their own localized posters. Some posters would be representational, which basically just means that they would just give off the vibe of the movie, and some would be informative, telling the audience what the story was, who was in it, and maybe they'd put on some critics' reviews. Film posters, like many art forms of the time, were subject to changing attitudes and art movements. Many people considered film to be merely entertainment, and so the poster designers wanted to sell the people on the fun they would have at the cinema. Leon Chwistek wrote, "I shall make bold to say that in definite circumstances, an ordinary promenade may turn into a work of art, just like a banquet, a dance party, or a sports show." So it seems like the sentiment wasn't that films were not art, but they were an art for the masses, divorced from the stuffiness of higher arts like painting and poetry. The artistry of film came from the ability to entertain, to make an audience laugh, cry, and enjoy life. But that's not how everyone saw the art of film. From the outset of motion pictures, many realized film's propagandistic potential. Think about it for a second. Films are much easier to consume than, say, novels. It might take days or weeks to read a single novel, but you can watch most films, especially back then, in less than a couple hours. They're more reproducible than plays, which require live actors on the stage during every performance, and they're also easier to understand for the average person than painting. Film can overwhelm its audience with a series of images and music. It borrows from the other art forms, photography, story, acting, music, etc., and it coalesces all of these forms of art into one new form. The result is that film can impact its large audience on subconscious emotional levels to tremendous effect. This can be great for telling stories. We fall in love with characters and feel attached to their hardships and desires. It's also great for propaganda. What better way to sway a large swath of people than to mix political or corporate messages into works that emotionally manipulate the audience? Just make them associate negative emotions with things you don't want them to like, and positive emotions with things or ideas that you want to propagate. So as governments and studios used films as propaganda, the posters for these movies followed suit. In some ways, the posters were just as, if not more effective tools of propaganda than the movies, except for the fact that they couldn't exist without the films. But think, people might see the movies once or maybe not at all, but they would see these posters, which were imbued with the propagandistic spirit of the films that they were selling, on the streets every day. It was highly effective at changing people's minds. Considering that during this time, there was a world war and following that, a turbulent political environment across Europe, you can bet that propaganda films and their posters flooded the cinemas and streets of Europe. Poland was not excluded, and Soviet-style propaganda posters would litter the streets of Poland after the end of World War II, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But more importantly, there were developments during this time that became the foundation for the Polish posters that we know and love. Art movements like Dadaism, Surrealism, Art Deco, Cubism, Suprematism, and other experimental forms of art took the world by storm. It wasn't long before cinema-goers felt their influence on film advertisements. And while these art movements were an influence on artists and designers in the Western world, they really inspired the Polish poster designers, who seemed to draw from these influences with particular flair. Now, while it was popular to paint posters that looked almost like stills from the film, designers started incorporating these new means of expression into their works. They'd paint scenes, single actors, expressions, and gestures that represented the reality of the films, but also played on the subconscious of the audience. Horror films and thrillers allowed the poster designers to get a bit more wild, like with these posters for The Testament of Dr. Mabuse and Tunnel. Another popular style at this time was photomontage, in which designers would arrange cutouts from the film on the posters. Some attribute the beginning of this style in posters to Leni Riefenstahl's film SOS Iceberg. Some notable Polish designers who created films in this style were Jan Polinski, Tadeusz Piotrowski, and Mieczysław Szcuka. There were still others, like Jerzy Hryniewiecki and Stefan Osiecki, who still painted their posters, but they didn't care too much about making the painting seem photorealistic. Instead, they drew heavily from the surrealists and sought to make the posters look more like paintings. The general thought of many of these designers was to create a sort of anti-elite form of art. They could take aspects of the avant-garde and the new art movements and then incorporate them into a new popular art. People wouldn't have to go to galleries to look at pieces of art. They could experience them on the streets, and they would have more of a connection to the pieces because the posters were inherently linked to the popular culture. I think that, at this time, the most radical kind of film posters that were designed in Poland were the posters that basically just consisted of text. These posters jettisoned any kind of representation of the films, and they sought a kind of pure utilitarianism, with Stanislaw Witkiewicz calling it pure form. Designers would experiment with fonts and text placement to create visually appealing film advertisements that had little to no pictures on them. Of course, these posters and advertisements came with the added benefit of being cheaper to print. So we have all these diverse styles that are flooding the cinemas, streets, journals, and newspapers of Poland in the interwar period, but we're not quite at what some might say is the golden age of the Polish film poster. I'm just setting everything up so you have a bit of foundation before we get to the really great stuff. These designers, they didn't come out of nowhere. During World War II, there was a slump in Polish film posters for obvious reasons, but after the war is when we see the designers in Poland really shine. At the beginning of the People's Republic of Poland, the style that was popular, or some might say pushed on designers, was socialist realism. This style is what many of us would think of when we think of Soviet propaganda. The posters had to have their nation's new socialist ideas imbued into them, showcasing the heroes of the new age: soldiers, industrial workers, farmers, etc. Still, some designers pushed back against this style, imbuing subtle metaphors into their works and incorporating elements of surrealism. One popular way to sort of rebel against this trend was to portray very mature movies cartoonishly on the posters. At the same time, we see the rise of the Polish poster school, a name thought to have been coined by Jan Lenica, spearheaded by people such as Henryk Tomaszewski and Roman Cieślewicz. Even though socialist realism was being pushed, there was something else in the air in Poland. No longer did posters have to function as commercial items first and artistic items second. No, the commercial aspect could be completely divorced from the posters. Film posters could stand alone as art. Many of the designers operated at the Warsaw Academy of Fine Arts, and there, their field of work held the same, or at least a similar amount, of respect as the other art forms. The thinking was that if film posters were works of art themselves, then they would serve an educational purpose for the public. The average person could learn from the posters about how to engage with art. For this reason, the political pressures on the posters eased, and the designers could operate fairly freely. Also, I don't think that they had much pressure from Hollywood, as Poland was behind the Iron Curtain, and I don't think studios really cared about how well their films performed in Poland. Furthermore, artistic posters complemented and elevated the films that they were representing. Posters like this were made for all kinds of films, foreign and domestic, but we also saw the rise of interesting Polish filmmakers in the mid-20th century. Filmmakers like Andrzej Wajda, Roman Polanski, Krzysztof Kieslowski, Krzysztof Zanussi, Andrzej Wajda, and Jerzy Kawelerowicz emerged at the time. Their films were dense, complex, and had strange atmospheres. These more artistic posters could capture the spirits of the films made by this new generation of Polish filmmakers. In the 70s and 80s, the posters started to incorporate some more striking images and took on new political undertones and overtones. There was a push for freedom and solidarity. Designers started to liberally incorporate religious iconography and themes of freedom into their works. Sometimes, iconography from film posters bled into political posters, as was the case with this Solidarity poster, which incorporated a representation of Gary Cooper from High Noon into it. The great Polish posters continued to be made into the 1990s, even though the People's Republic of Poland fell in 1989. However, the times were changing. Graphic design being done on computers, the internet, and globalization led to the decline of the Polish posters that we know and love. Still, many were made in this time, and they continued to experiment with form, but the film poster was generally absorbed into the homogeneous Western culture. That doesn't mean that they're gone forever, as artists have continued to make posters of this kind for movies, though for many of them, not in any kind of official capacities. Still, the fact that people are still out there making super cool posters for movies is great, and the internet allows them to share their creations with the world. They might not be hung up on cinemas to advertise the movies, but we can buy or make prints of them to hang up in our homes. I encourage you all to do a deep dive into this art form. I assure you that you'll find some of the coolest posters ever made. Maybe you can find some prints for sale, and I dare say that they will make your rooms look great, but I will also say they're not cheap. For this next segment, I sat down with my friend Solar Sands, who runs an art channel here on YouTube, to discuss some of my favorite Polish film posters. All right, guys, this is the final part of the video. Solar Sands has joined me. I dragged him out of his room and forced him to be here.
Yes, you did.
And I am just going to show him some Polish film posters that I really like, of movies that I love, and we're just going to talk about them for a little bit. What film do you think this is?
Okay, so I've got some clues. I see death. I see Pataki copied and pasted over and over again like a crazy person. But I also see Alfred Hitchcock, and I know he made a bird film. Yeah. So I'm guessing Pataki means bird or birds.
Yeah, let me look that up on Google Translate right here.
And this is Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds?
It means birds.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Context clues.
I like what this poster does. So as I've talked about a little bit earlier in the video, is that there was a whole trend in Polish posters in like the 20s and 30s of just having text-based posters and using text and like different fonts and assortment of text to create visual design. It's giving the effect of like a whole horde of birds.
Yes.
You know, so you only see the skull with wings, which is like, it's like a bird, but you know, it has that feeling of death with it.
Right. I'm struck by how chaotic everything is. Like, you got, of course, all the Pataki layered on top of each other, but I don't know if this is the scan or if that's how it originally showed up. But even the top paragraph is really off center.
Yeah.
So everything's just like coming down on you.
This movie, I don't think that you've even heard about this film.
I probably have not. So, we had the key eye boy, the keyhole eye boy.
So I'll tell you the name of the film, and then you try to give me like your impressions of what the poster's telling you about it. Okay. So the name of the film is A Short Film About Love.
A short film about love.
Yeah.
Wow, that is quite a contrast. I would not have guessed that. I really would not have.
It looks a lot darker.
It does look a lot darker.
Well, the movie is kind of dark, to be fair.
Okay, probably. I mean, there's even like a single drop of blood tear coming out of it.
So I'll tell you, in A Short Film About Love, which is Decalogue 6. So it was like a TV series that Krzysztof Kieslowski made, but then two of the episodes became feature films. So this is one of them that became a feature film. This one is about a boy who kind of is a voyeur of this woman, and he like looks through this like telescope into her apartment and, you know, watches her undress and bring men home.
So I see. So he's like looking through the keyhole.
Yeah, like little peepholes. And it turns into this weird...
That's pretty clever.
It turns into this weird relationship that ends up kind of hurting them both, which is, I guess, where it's like tears, but it's blood, which I think is, I don't know, maybe it's blood because it's passion rather than just like...
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. But
I'm curious about all the... It looks like it's scribbled up here.
Yeah.
Like, is that the film information?
Yeah, because that's the director here, Krzysztof Kieslowski, and I think the actors.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It also kind of looks like the title was stamped onto the film itself, because you have the little inklings of where the stamp lines would be.
Yeah, that's true.
Kind of fascinating.
Yeah, so this is the movie On the Silver Globe.
This is kind of like Francis Bacon.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cool stuff in here. So On the Silver Globe came out in, I want to say, the late 70s. This is also around the same time that Polish poster designers were putting in what you might say are like anti-communist iconography into their films, such as like Christian iconography, solidarity, and those sorts of things. And I think that's super obvious here with the crown of thorns that he's wearing.
Yes.
Because the character is like a messiah character in the film.
It's a really striking image. See, these are all like horror movie posters.
Well, and then look on his face. So it looks like he's bleeding, but this looks like Africa, South America, Europe,
I didn't
North America. So the globe is on his face.
That was very clever.
Yeah, his head and then his skin is silver, and it's kind of like the Messiah is that entire world.
Silver globe. There we go.
Here, let me see if you can guess this one.
Oh, is this? Okay, I see 12. Is this 12 Angry Men?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Oh, I think it's just all close-ups of their faces. It's fascinating. That's the
guy on trial.
The guy on trial. You only see him for like a minute.
Yeah.
In the scene, but he's front and center. That's pretty good, but it's like it looks like a horror movie again, even though that movie's actually pretty hopeful. You
have the blood splatter telling you that it's a murder trial.
Yes. You
have all the photo montage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of the 12 different men in there, but you can't see their fully formed faces, you know.
Yes.
So it's like they're all fractured, but then he's fractured, and it's almost like he's fractured because...
Are there 12 lines on his face?
Maybe it's 13. I don't know, but...
Close enough.
Yeah, close enough. He's split between all the different people.
Yes.
But I think it also makes it look like he's behind bars.
Yes.
You know?
That too. Wow.
Yeah.
These are like very dense in terms of visual metaphors and stuff.
You can probably guess this one.
Oh, can I? Marlon Brando, Martin Shue. This is Apocalypse. This is Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
All right. I like this one a lot, actually. I think this might be one of my favorites. It's just a really emotive portrait with this hailstorm of color and lines and they got the little helicopters in the background too.
Oh yeah,
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And the text on its side along with the regular text, very striking.
Yeah, is this supposed to be maybe like, gunfire? It just kind of, there's helicopters down here too.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they're kind of everywhere.
They're kind of everywhere, which makes him look like he's like the size of like a god.
He looks like he is the war itself.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I really like that one.
And it's this chaos all surrounding it. These like very like stone cold, almost like very intense eyes with this like frown. It's a sort of unnerving face that he's making. And it's mostly just like oranges and black. Mm-hmm. A little bit of white in there.
Yeah, it reminds me of like, you got like a thick ink outline and then maybe some charcoal kind of texture in there. And then you got the white highlights. It's very, very, it's like I'm feeling the emotion of this with the gesture of everything.
It almost feels like they went a little Jackson Pollock over like what they...
Yeah, they did a little bit.
Yeah. No, I love this one. Yeah, so this is Amateur Camera Buff. And this is a pretty simple design. They put this, it's 2 photos, and they just put the camera lens on top of the guy's face. His whole face is the camera lens. And it's a movie about a guy who's getting into filmmaking and he becomes obsessed.
Oh, there you go.
And, this is a simpler one. I still like this, but I think that this tells you.
It's really direct.
It's really direct.
Telling you, like,
this one's really direct.
There's no other, it's not much ambiguity.
So this is the one.
Yeah, you told me about this.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
I wouldn't. if with Steven Spielberg, I would have guessed this was E.T. Yeah, not that.
So this one I read somewhere, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I read somewhere that what happened is that they didn't have access to actually see the movie beforehand. So they didn't know what the aliens would look like.
I mean,
and it looks like what would be like the cover for like a children's sci-fi novel at that time.
It looks like one of those awful like drawings with the rat on the motorcycle kind of vibe. This or like a 70s like this looks 70s CBT advertisement.
Look at his face too with the big buck teeth.
Yeah, it was like
we got bucktooth aliens coming in.
Yeah.
But
he's like, it's gonna be all fine, man.
So this one is
Seven Samurai.
Seven Samurai.
A little fruity, a little zesty samurai. Damn, he's got that whole thing out. Oh, I really like this one too. It's kind of like the face down here. It's kind of Picasso.
Yeah.
It's kind of Picasso. It's kind of Cubist.
It's like it's mixing Cubism with some like traditional forms of like Japanese art.
Yeah, like inkblot. Or woodblock prints.
Yeah.
Yeah, you even got like something that kind of looks like a maker's mark.
Yeah.
I like that one too. What is that, a little doll?
Little doll or a little kid?
Oh damn.
Yeah, this one.
It's just so different from like we're all standing, like we're just standing in a row kind of poster. We're big head, surrounded by small people kind of poster. It's like a scene. They're all in action. Yeah, they're all in action,
and it's like their gestures and their poses and their faces are being used to kind of tell you something about who that character is in the film. Let me see if you can guess this one.
Oh crap. Okay. We got like a Black Hand and Doctor Doom. Oscar M.
Gregory Peck.
No, I think I can't guess this one. I do not know. I don't have a clue.
This is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
That is not. I wouldn't have guessed that. No, I don't think I've seen that movie actually.
What?
The movie version. I read the book.
Yeah.
But even then, I feel like if I watched the movie, I still wouldn't get it. How?
Yeah, it's just I haven't seen the movie since.
Is that the main character's face?
No,
or is that the main
man
getting
Scout.
On trial?
I think that's the man on trial.
Okay.
And then this looks more like a female hand, I want to say.
Maybe.
I don't know if that's supposed to be the hand of Scout, the little girl who's the main character, or if that's supposed to be the person who's accusing him.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I mean, it's so abstract, except for that haunting face in the middle. Yeah, it looks like a horror movie. It looks like
well,
like,
especially with the text that's like
going
slanted up, and it's almost like it's just like he's in the hand of this person, and he's like prisoner in whoever this person's hand is, or maybe this person's trying to say I think you can read this just a number of different ways.
Yeah. Lots of different interpretations.
It's not like some of the others were like very obvious.
Yeah. Some of these is genuine art.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, anyways, thanks for joining me. And as always, I've been the Kino Corner, and I will see you all in the next video.